Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Make Your Brain Smarter preview to the Pinnacle Experience presented by Jeff Hurt. This is Natasha Misavi with the SMPS headquarters staff. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to cover. On the right side of your screen, you will see the GoToWebinar sidebar. You can click on the orange arrow to expand or minimize the side panel. We encourage questions throughout this interactive program, so please type your question into the chat box and then click the send button to submit. Today's program is being recorded and will be posted on the SMPS YouTube page at youtube.com/SMPSnational. It is now my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today, Jeff Hurt. Jeff, please take it away.
Thanks, Natasha. Appreciate it. My name is Jeff Hurt, and we're going to be talking about making your brain smarter, which is a preview to the Pinnacle Experience. It's also a preview to turbocharge your brain and also the neuroscience of innovation. We are going to use the question box on the right-hand side for also answers. So I want to know right off the bat, where in the world are you? Would you type in what city you're in and what your weather's like? Would you type in what city you're in and what your weather's like over there in that question box on the right-hand side? Send it to me. I'm in Dallas, Texas, and it is cloudy, rainy, muggy. We've had rainstorm this morning, last night and this morning. We needed. So, hi, Katie, Boston and sunny, St. Louis, Stacy, good to see you. It's sunny. Okay. Looking for some more of you. Give you a couple more seconds once you get comfortable using this, because we're going to use it throughout the whole presentation. Thank you. Hi, Eddie, Miami. Weather is sunny. Tampa, Florida. Katie, thank you. Tulsa, Daryl, thank you. Laura, Hamilton, Ontario. A little chilly. My colleague is actually in Ontario right now as well. Salt Lake City, Wally, thank you. A little cloudy. Alaska, Anchorage. Wow, your day is just starting. Yes, thanks for joining us. Appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for doing that. And we're going to use this throughout the entire presentation, so I want you to get comfortable with it, because I'm going to ask you lots of questions and want you to be involved in feedback. So, I want to thank you for your time. I always start with a presenter-attendee agreement. Even when I'm doing a webinar, I want to make an agreement with you and hope you make the same agreement with me. I believe in the law of the click. If this presentation doesn't need to get a text, to get a phone call, you have the right to click on out of here and do something more important. Some of you might have 2 or 3 screens or 2 or 3 devices open. I'm going to ask you to put those devices on vibrate, please, just to help you with your focus. Your strategic attention, which we're going to talk about this morning. Texting, typing, social sharing is welcome. You're welcome to share anything that I share with you. Tweet them to others as you would tweet them to them. If you're going to use Twitter this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are in the world. Also, if you're going to use Twitter, I'm going to ask you to tweet something good from the presentation before you tweet anything bad. In this presenter-attendee agreement, let's make understanding our goal. Why do we need to have brain health? How does it impact innovation? How does it impact our productivity? How can we turbocharge our brain? And I'm going to declare this is a safe space to disagree, ponder, question. I will move the phone closer to me. Is that better, Wally and Julia? Let me know if that's better. So I'm going to ask if this is a safe place to question, ponder, disagree, and you can push back on me. Thanks, Wally. That's what I wanted to know. My fault. I had put the phone down. And finally, you get a free pass. If I ask you to do something and you don't want to do it, you can always type in free pass or FP or just F, and we'll know what you mean. So that's my presenter-attendee agreement. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Julia. So I'd like to know a little bit about you. Well, first off, here's a little bit about me. I'm a nonprofit junkie. I'm a meeting and event professional. My background is actually in education. I have fallen in love with the neuroscience of learning, just how to use our brains more productively, how to be more creative, how to be more innovative. And you're going to hear a little bit about that as we go through this presentation. So it's your turn. I want to know about you. If your brain were a mode of transportation, what would it be? If your brain were a mode of transportation, what would it be? Would you type in, okay, Wally says it's a spaceship. Wally, tell us a little bit more about that. I'm curious about that one. Wally says his would be a spaceship. If your brain were a mode of transportation, what would it be? Katie's is a pogo stick, like that one. I'm way out there many days, Wally says. Okay. Stacy says a Winnebago. Okay. I'm curious about some of these. Tell us a little bit why you're thinking of these things too. These are interesting. If your brain were a mode of transportation, what would it be? We've got a spaceship, a pogo stick, a Winnebago. We got another spaceship. So there's some compadres here. A school bus because it's so chaotic inside, Katie says. Katie says she's all over the place with her pogo stick. All right. I appreciate that. Anybody else? I'm looking for a couple more here. Give me a couple more seconds. I appreciate all of those. If your brain were a mode of transportation, what would it be? A mule cart. That one's really interesting. Room for lots of stuff, but a lot slower these days, Stacy says, when she's referring to a Winnebago. Daryl says a helicopter. Interesting. Okay. So, I'm going to ask you another question about yourself I'd like to know. And here it is. What type of transportation would you like your brain to be? What type of transportation would you like your brain to be? Would you type in, if you could choose it, and you'd like it to be something else, what would you like it to be? Laura says rapid transit. Okay. Laura says rapid transit. Katie says a race car, fast and efficient. Stacy says a charter jet, zoom, zoom, sleek. Katie says a hovercraft. There's two Katies on here. A Telsa, Julia. Beach cruise bicycle, slow enough to observe what's around me and enjoy the journey. Michelle, thanks for tuning in. Wally says he's good right where he is with a spaceship. Okay. Selena says the same thing. And then Daryl says a bullet train, fast and stays on track. Well, if I can have my brain be any type of transportation, I would actually like to be a bicycle tour leader. Now, I don't ride a bike anywhere today, but what I'd like to do is take people on tour. And oftentimes we hear people say, well, you can get on the bus and the driver's going to take you somewhere. Well, I'd like to take a group of people on their own bicycles where they can venture off on their own journeys as they want and come back and join the tour as they're ready. So that's kind of mine. So I appreciate everybody playing along with this. We'll talk about this a little bit more as we go through this. So this information is coming from the Center for Brain Health and the Brain Performance Institute. I have been studying some of the information that's coming from this university. And what's interesting, the Center for Brain Health is actually the neuroscience arm of the University of Texas at Dallas. The Brain Performance Institute is a translational arm. They have an entire division. You're looking at the building there. It just opened up. They have a grand opening this coming month, October 19th. And they do translational research. All the research that comes out in neuroscience, they take it and translate it into personal professional lives for executives, for business professionals, for middle schools, for any profession, and how it can be applied and used, which is really an interesting concept because so oftentimes what comes out in research takes 10 to 30 years before it ever gets into our practice. Dr. Sandra Bond Chapman is the CEO founder of the Center for Brain Health and the Brain Performance Institute. This information is coming from this book. She's a fascinating woman. I'm fascinated by what she's doing and how she's organizing. She's quite collegial. She's very gregarious, very friendly. You would love her if you met her in person. Here's also where some of this information is coming from, what makes your brain happy and why you should do the opposite and make your brain smarter. Here's what I want to talk about in the next 30, 35, 40 minutes. We're going to identify one strategy to make your brain smarter that leads to a more successful business regardless of your age. And we're going to discuss how smart strategies lead to brain health and thus healthy, successful businesses. So those are my two learner outcomes. Sorry about that. Wait a second. Here we go. Which of these learner outcomes interest you the most and why? There they are. Number one, number two. Identify one strategy to make your brain smarter that leads to successful businesses regardless of your age, or discuss how smart strategies lead to brain health and thus healthy, successful business. Would you type in number one or two for me? Which one of these two interests you the most and why? One or two? So I'm getting quite a few number ones. Selena says, surprise me. We got one number two. You're like most people. We want the takeaways. We want the immediate application. And, it's very interesting because you're following the biology of your brain. You want stuff you can use immediately. What we have found through neuroscience and through cognitive psychology and biology of the brain is while our brain wants the immediate takeaway, what we have to do is we have to understand the why before the what. We have to understand why it's going on before we ever understand how. And so one of the things is why your brain likes this is because then it doesn't have to think. If there's no thinking involved, there's not going to be any attitude, behavior, and changes in your attitudes, behaviors, or skills. And we want the thinking. If I just give you my recipe without you understanding what's underneath the recipe and how it works, you'll try to copy it, but you won't be able to customize it for your own context. You won't be able to personalize it. and make it work for you, regardless of the situation, because there's not a full understanding. So right off the bat, I've just given you a lesson here. Your brain is going to be attracted to the quick tips, the smart steps, the steps to success that somebody else has done. What we need to do is we need to understand the principles before we understand the facts or the steps. We need to understand the principles before we understand the facts and steps. This is part of the neuroscience that's coming out. So people who get the principles first, they really get the context, they get the steps, and they can use it anywhere. So thank you very much for those. So let's move on from here. So what's in this presentation for you? Why would this be important? What's in this presentation for you and your business? Why should you engage? Why should you engage in mental engagement? Why should you commit time in mental engagement? If I don't get your mental engagement in this presentation, it's really worthless. And so it's all about me getting you to think, inviting you in to think differently and to think about this. So what's in this presentation that will actually benefit you in the long run? Why do you think, so I'm going to flip this one to you. Why do you think brain health is important? The term we don't hear a lot about. When I say the word brain health, why do you think that's important? What do you think is important about brain health? I'll let you give me some responses. And this has to do with why this presentation would be important to you. What do you think brain health is? Why do you think brain health would be important? Not as quick with this one. Why do you think brain health would be important? Giving you a couple more seconds. Here we go. So we've had somebody write in that their dad has Alzheimer's, and it's the opposite of brain health. Absolutely. I don't want that in the future. Maybe proactive treatment will benefit. Point on. Efficient and correct decision-making and judgment, that would be important for brain health. Without the brain, what else is there? Stacy, bingo. What's interesting is throughout our lives, we hear everything about the body health. We hear about heart health. We hear about vision health, eye health. We hear lots of different ways the word health is being used. We have not started hearing about brain health. We have a lot of information coming out about our brains and neuroscience. And Michelle says it has to be exercised and stretched like a muscle in your body. Brain health is brain street. Bingo. That's exactly right. It's the same thing. We have to begin to use our brain appropriately because our bodies are going to live longer. So why is brain health important? The brain is your most valuable asset. Katie, brain controls every decision you make. The brain controls everything you do. We don't want to live longer and have poor brain health because it's going to create a real challenge for us. And it's all about, the financial, but also we know just the health of our brain as it relates to the rest of our body. It's very critical that we begin to understand this. What's interesting, the Center for Brain Health and the Brain Performance Institute, by the end of this year, will be coming out with a set of data that the medical community can use to find out if you have a healthy brain and what you may need to be doing to move towards a healthy brain. And there are things that you can do on a regular basis to create more health of your brain, to strengthen that muscle. If only there were a pill. Experts often comment that if the brain health came in a pill, then it would be the most sought after drug. I agree. Now, believe it or not, this is actually the cover of a magazine. Pills to make you smart. There's a lot of ads out there right now. There's even TV ads. There's ads online about certain pills, certain things that will make your brain more healthy. None of that's really been proven yet. So here's some interesting things that the Center for Brain Health will tell you. Insights and strategies can help you accomplish what is most important to you each day, improve your focus, boost your mental energy, filter productivity depleting distractions, and unlock fresh ideas and perspectives. When you focus on your brain health, you can turbocharge your brain and begin to improve these. So I want you to think of the smartest person you know. Now, don't tell us their name. What makes them smart? What do you think makes somebody smart? Think of the smartest person you know, and what do you think makes them smart? And would you type that in, please? Think of the smartest person you know. What makes them smart? What do you think makes them smart? Laura says they're always curious. Curiosity. Reading a lot. Exposure to information and new ideas, Michelle says. Good problem solver, Katie says. Selena says, intuitive cognitive grasp of complexities. Selena, the Center for Brain Health, would say they get the gist of something quickly. They get the gist. Wally says, incredible insights, ability to synthesize complex information. Again, Wally, kind of the same thing. I love that. Insights and gist. Retains and recalls information, which allows for great understanding of context of any situation. I knew somebody would bring up retention of memory at some point. They seem to remember things that have common sense ability to be more objective. Selena said, the way I said it was less wordy. Well, you know, I was going to give the Center for Brain Health credit for that one because they taught me that. I actually took a 3-day course from the Center for Brain Health. I had read Dr. Von Chapman's book. I actually devoured it. I actually took pieces of it and put it into presentations I do, which is where some of this is coming from. And she talks a lot about getting the gist of something. It comes from the research. So what's interesting is, you know, when we start thinking about smart people, you guys came up with some really interesting ideas. Most people go to memory. And everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid. Everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. What does this mean to you? What does this quote mean to you? How would you apply this quote to the work that you do in marketing? What does this mean to you? Would you type in some responses for me? Stacy says we're all unique. Okay. What else? What would this mean to you? Everyone has strengths, and you need to identify and capitalize on those with each individual. Katie, thank you. Smart is contextual. Oh, Selena, that was nice and concise. It's about expertise in a specific area. Wally, great. Anybody else? Now, here's a little bit of what I'm doing. I'm actually causing you to, here comes Nolan, everyone is limited by something, but that doesn't mean they can't excel at other things. There's a whole interesting twist on that. Thanks, Dale, for sharing that. I'm actually getting you to use integrated reasoning. I'm focusing on the frontal lobes with some of the questions that I'm asking you. Not just rote memorization questions or rote thinking questions, just responding automatically with 2 + 2 = 4. I'm actually asking you to use a different part of your brain. And this quote right here and asking you what it means and how it applies to your work is integrated reasoning. It's part of the SMART strategy. So I have a couple more commands. We can't judge smarts and performance on a universal standard. Michelle likes that. While we all have weaknesses, some of us hide them better than others. Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's what's really interesting. I'm going to ask you right now for the rest of this presentation. We've got about 20, 23 minutes left. I want you for the rest of this presentation to focus on 2 top things that you want to take home from this presentation. There may have been something already, but I just want you, as we're going through this, to think about what are the 2 things that I want to take away from this presentation. What are the 2 things that I want to remember, I want to recall, I want to share with others, I want to focus on. So I just want you to think about that. So what is SMART? Well, SMART is an acronym for Strategic Memory Advanced Reasoning Training. It's a dynamic training program that teaches strategies to improve complex reasoning skills and enhance brain performance. Now, this program, you can read it right in Make Your Brain Smarter book. I'm actually going to look at this with you. I'm going to teach some of this with you now, share some of it with you now, and I'm going to share some of it with you actually at the Pinnacle Experience. So let's look at what it is. SMART provides a way of thinking using practical strategies that require concerted effort to promote frontal lobe engagement. It increases mental efficiency and productivity and builds cognitive resilience. So let me just tell you something right off the bat as a presenter and a learner, and also as somebody who really likes to help other people understand. I am reading my slide to you. There's a reason I'm reading my slide to you. As the research shows, if I put up a bunch of words and I start talking about them, you are either stuck with, do I read what's there or do I listen? And the brain gets confused. So, most presenters would tell you, you never read the slides. Well, that's just the opposite of what the research in neuroscience, and cognitive psychology, the biology of learning would say. You should read the slides and then talk about it. That way people can follow along with you. Otherwise, you're creating this dissonance in the brain. So SMART provides a way of thinking using practical strategies that require concerted effort to promote frontal lobe engagement. Frontal lobe engagement is the key. This habitual engagement in the use of these strategies has a potential not only strengthen and rewire your network, but also enrich life's activities, events, and experiences. This is something that can be learned. I just want to show you, when people practice these strategies, what happens? When people actually practice, you see brain scans here. When people learn some of these strategies, so we're giving you a set of tools, and they practice them, they have a 25% increase in complex reasoning, 38% increase in memory, and 42% decrease in stress-related symptoms. Isn't that interesting? So building frontal networks. What in the world are we talking about? We're talking about the front part of your brain versus the limbic system, or the back part of your brain. The limbic area of the brain is the emotional part of the brain. It's the part that our brain defaults to. So when we're talking about building frontal networks, we're talking about strategic attention. We're talking about endurance. Efficiently managing time and cognitive resources to improve focus and prioritize important information. We're also talking about integrated reasoning, strengths, intentionally processed at a transformed level of thought. That's that transformed level of thought for higher order problem solving, memory, and reasoning. Integrated reasoning. Like putting up a quote and saying, what does this mean? You're having to use a different part of your brain. Yes, Eddie, yes, I'm going to give this presentation to you. Natasha, also to Marcy, you can get this presentation at the end. Absolutely. You can take it and make it yours. So here we go. Integrated reasoning, strategic attention, and the last one is innovation and flexibility. Shift routine thinking into action plans and diverse perspectives that work to propel your personal and professional goals. Now, here's what's going to be really interesting for you. Where I'm going to spend the majority of my time at the Pinnacle Experience is on these latter two, integrated reasoning and innovation. We all want to be more innovative, more creative. And so at the Pinnacle Experience, I'm going to spend a lot of time working on these two, the neuroscience of integrated reasoning and the neuroscience of innovation. So today, I'm giving you a little bit of taste of how I present, what it's like to whet your appetite, and we're giving you a little bit of the strategic attention stuff, just as a way to let you know what's going to happen. When we talk about the front lobes, the smart brain, robust frontal networks, here's what we're talking about, and here's where it happens. It happens in this frontal area: complex problem solving, novel thinking, innovation, emotional intelligence, managing the emotions, mental flexibility, the ability to be agile, judgment and decision making. There's that word, managing emotions again. So this is what we're talking about. Here is the frontal lobe. Now you see the limbic lobe? The limbic lobe is where most of us operate on a regular basis. It's where our brain defaults to first. If you've ever had an emotional hijack, somebody pushes your button. Well, here's what happens. When the limbic lobe is being used, it shuts down the frontal lobe, and you cannot use these smart strategies. They compete with each other. And the limbic lobe is the part of our brain that did not evolve with the rest of our brain. So the brain defaults to the limbic first, and then to the frontal. Now, here's what's interesting. When we talk about marketing, oftentimes when we market to people, we engage the emotional part of the brain. We engage the wow part of the brain. We engage the aha part of the brain. Well, that's the limbic brain. And we actually call it the dumb, novelty-seeking part of the brain. And that part of the brain can release dopamine, can release cortisol, which has negative impacts. And what we want to do is we want to start engaging the frontal lobe, because the frontal lobe, when it's engaged, releases oxytocin along with the dopamine and the serotonin. And it causes attitude, behavior, and skill changes. The limbic lobe creates neural addiction. We want this dopamine drip. I'll use this as an example. If you've ever seen a Cirque du Soleil show, you've seen one, wow, it's amazing. The first time you see one, a good friend of mine says, once you've seen one, you've seen about all of them. because they all seem to have very similar type of storylines and acrobatics, and you're looking for, well, what's next? How does it get better than this? Because we created these neural addicted people wanting the next high, the next wow. And so a smart team, a team of your colleagues working together for your clients, your customers, is able to work in these areas. So here's my question to you. What percentage of your work every day is the same? You repeat the same thing over and over again, the same process. Would you type in a percentage? How much of your daily work is the same? It's repetitive from what you always do. How much of your daily work is the same? Would you type that in for me? I have quite a few, 20%, 30%, 15%. Okay, interesting. A lot lower than I would have thought. Okay, so most of the people are between the 10 and 30%. So here's my next question for you. What are the pros and cons of doing the same thing the same way all the time? What are the pros and cons of doing the same thing the same way all the time? What are the pros and cons of doing the same thing the same way all the time? Type in some responses. You can get more efficient at it. Okay. Con is redundancy. Pro, efficiency. Boredom, a con, absolutely. Pro, you can get better. It's easier. Con, no longer interesting. Yep, that burnout. Cons, boredom, lack of motivation, lack of innovative thinking. Con, complacency, lack of innovation. Yep. Pro, you can become an expert in it. Stop thinking about it, challenging and questioning why. Yes, Laura. Pros, develop expertise. Cons, get on autopilot, not very sharp. Become blind to problems, Daryl says. All of these are right on track. Develop expertise. Con, the autopilot thing is really interesting. Thanks for sharing that one, because that one's critical. It's what we're actually going to talk about here. Complacency, lack of innovation, expert status. So, it's very interesting, because when we do the same thing the same way all the time, the brain takes note of it. If you get home the same way all the time, if you drive home or you take public transportation the same way all the time, the brain will say, hey, you don't have to think about doing this anymore. I've got it for you. I can do it for you. So here's my next question. What percentage of your daily work is involved in creating status quo or average? What percentage of your daily work is involved in creating status quo or average? What percentage of your daily work do you default to creating status quo or average? So let me help clarify it a little bit. How much of the work that you do on a daily basis is unique and different and constantly different from what you've done before and not average? So I have somebody type in that way too much of the work is status quo. It's a problem. I've got a 5%, a 30%. I have somebody doing 50%. What's interesting is, and it goes back to the question that was earlier, oftentimes when we're looking for somebody else's tips, tricks to success, we're looking for status quo and average, because we don't want to think about it. We don't want to be innovative. And our brain will even tell us, well, if they've already done this, why can't I take their methods and make them mine? And we end up copying them. And we end up just creating the same thing. That's why I'm not a fan of best practices. By the time something becomes a best practice, it's average. It's status quo. It's a standard. It's not unique. It's not different. It's not creative. So, let's skip this question. So thinking about this automator or doing the same thing all the time, or unique and novel, slow thinking or fast thinking, slow thinking or fast thinking. So is slow or fast thinking repeating the same thing day after day? Which do you think it is? Slow thinking or fast thinking repeating the same thing day after day? Type it in. Slow thinking or fast thinking repeating the same thing day after day? See? Got a couple fast, got a couple slows. Slow or none. Stacy says slow or none. Interesting. Now I'm going to throw something else to you. what I'm doing here is I'm asking you to struggle with something, to wrestle with a question before I actually give you the information. It's another technique in helping people learn something. The research shows if I will engage your thinking with a question before we ever discuss the content and then give you what it is, you'll self-correct and you'll remember, your retention rate will go up higher. So is slow or fast in repeating the same thing every day? Well, doing the same thing the same way all the time creates fast thinking. We don't think about it. We just start doing it. We go into this kind of automatic pilot mode. Our brains go into automatic pilot when using fast thinking, repeating what we always do. You've heard this before in some of your own group meetings, collaborative meetings, team meetings. What's the way we always do it? We've always done it that way. Why would we change it now? It seems to work, so why change? Well, there's a lot of reasons why to change. One of them has to do with your brain health. The constant default, the way we've always done it, has some negative impact. It creates the gateway for toxic thinking. Doing the same thing the same way all the time is the gateway for early dementia and early Alzheimer's because you're not using your frontal lobes. You're defaulting to automation and the brain just fast decision making, doing the same thing or no thinking at all, doing it fast. In order to improve our innovative thinking and strategies, we have to engage in thinking about our thinking. That's what this whole presentation, what I'll be doing with you at the Pinnacle Experience is going to be about. Thinking about our thinking. Thinking about our thinking. We actually call this metacognition. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking while you're thinking to improve your thinking. The research in the neuroscience field, the cognitive psychology, biology of learning, the Center for Brain Health, the Brain Performance Institute shows if you'll spend time in metacognition, thinking about your thinking while you're thinking, you actually improve your thinking skills and you actually improve your learning. So I'm exposing some of these strategies to you right now. So what drives brain health and performance? What actually drives a healthier brain? Cognitive engagement, using those frontal lobes, working more out of the frontal lobe than the limbic system, managing stress, it's true, physical activity, and it's true, nutrition, and believe it or not, sleep. 8 hours of consistent sleep and social engagement, being among family and friends. That helps improve your brain health. So are your daily habits toxic to your brain health? Take a look at this. This is from the Center for Brain Health. If you're tied to technology all the time, if you're constantly multitasking, if you're constantly in information overload, or cruising on autopilot with fast thinking, you have some habits that are toxic to your brain. Now that's kind of hard because most of us have to deal with those every day. And how often do you give your brain downtime? How often do you focus on sequential tasking, not multitasking, one thing at a time? How often do you prioritize? And how often do you engage in innovative thinking strategies? Isn't that interesting? Innovative thinking strategies actually improve your brain health and improve the longevity of the use of the brain as your life expands. What derails brain health and performance? Feeling overwhelmed, feeling unproductive, deep thought deprived. How often do you spend time in reflection or deep thought? Or even how often do you spend time in daydreaming, allowing the brain to wander and stepping away from this constant routine that we do or feeling overwhelmed and feeling stressed? Because stress has a huge negative impact. The way we react to it is critical. Now here's what's interesting. Here's some brain scans of neurons and the dendrites in your brain. And if you look, chronic stress damages. If you look on the left-hand side, you see there's not much activity. So chronic stress damages brain structure and connectivity. Brain inundated with a stress hormone called cortisol. That's what causes our guts to expand.
reduce neuronal activity, and prevents the brain from operating efficiently. What does this mean for you? Well, your brain's not sharp, it's not resilient, it's not adaptable. There's increased incidence of depression, anxiety, and rage. It impacts your memory, decision-making, and your ability to manage your emotions, emotional regulation. So here's what's interesting. The ability of an individual to tolerate progressive brain pathology without demonstrating clinical cognitive symptoms, called cognitive reserve. The more you will use the frontal lobes of your brain, the more you build up a cognitive reserve in the brain. What this means is the more brain cells you have, they're reserved, the more they're able to fight off Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So not only does it become professional, because the more we use the frontal lobes, the more strategic we are in our work, the more innovative we are in our work, the more creative we are in our work, the more we're wanted by employers, but it also creates personal brain health, and it wards off early dementia and early Alzheimer's. So we are drowning in information, but starving for meaning. We are drowning in information, but starving for meaning. What does this mean to you? Would you type in what do you think this quote means to you? What does this mean to you? We're drowning in information, but starving for meaning. What does this mean to you? Drowning in information, but starving for meaning. What does this personally mean to you? Too much clutter, hard to sort through it all. Thank you, Wally. Yeah. Information overload, not enough relevant information. We have to get good at curation, Katie. Too much coming in and not enough time to make sense of any of it. Too much noise, too many distractions, lack of focused relevance. We don't take time to understand, take in information. Connecting our lifestyle to our reality isn't happening. Stress results. Information overload, but no meaningful content. Personally, nothing personally meaningful. Thank you for sharing those. Those are absolutely right on target. And what's interesting, we know now that today there's more information hitting us than there ever has been. So, quick self-test. Type in a number real quickly. The number of times per day the average person checks their phone. Number of times per day the average person checks their smartphone. What do you think it is? 25, 32, come on, quick. 50, 85, 100, 45, 100. All right, here we go. You ready for this? 150, and that's considered low. 150 times a day, the average person checks their smartphone. Oh my gosh, I won't repeat what Selena said, but you can figure it out. She said, holy something. Here's the next one. The average time most people are able to work without an interruption or switching tasks. The average time most people are able to work without switching tasks and interruption. I've got 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 8, 15, 8, 6, 5. You ready for this one? Here it is. 1 to 3 minutes. 1 to 3 minutes. No wonder we're constantly distracted and overwhelmed. 1 to 3 minutes. All right, here comes my next question. The average amount of time to resume focus on a task after being interrupted or task switching. How long it takes you to get back on task after being interrupted or multitasking? 1 minute, 1 to 3, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Here we go. 20 to 25 minutes. Did you catch that? 20 to 25 minutes. Are you catching what's happening here? This is what's happening to us on a daily basis. Then the next one. The potential decrease in productivity due to distractions and multitasking. What do you think the potential decrease in productivity due to distractions and multitasking? I'm just going to give you this one. Oops, let me go backwards. 40%. 40% decrease in productivity due to distractions and multitasking. The whole social media thing has its pros and cons. I use it. I don't look at it a whole lot. There are times in the day when I do go there. But what we now know is searching for a Facebook like and something that you posted gives us the same dopamine drip from the limbic system of the brain, something wow happening. We get that same checkup. And whenever we get an email, whenever we get a text, whenever we get a tweet from somebody or somebody retweets something of ours, we get the same dopamine rush as we do when we check off a task for productivity. The personal cost of distractions of interruptions is increased stress levels, increased feelings of frustrations, and increased efforts. So, here's the cost of all of this. It comes down to $10,375 per year per person. And the Center for Brain Health says, we've got to figure out how to get beyond this. So what do we do? What are some skills? What derails brain health and performance? What causes us to be deep thought deprived? Hide the technology, constant mental work, multimedia input, ADHD-like state. So what do? The solution is the brain power of none. Give the brain a break. Take some time during the day when you step away, you unplug, you disengage for at least 5 minutes. 5 times a day, take 5 minutes to spark your next aha moment. The neuroscience studies from the Center for Brain Health at the University of Texas at Dallas has found if you'll take 5 times a day to take 5 minutes to step away, turn it off, step away, go take a walk, go think, go to the water cooler, and just disengage. Don't think about work. It improves your brain health. Yes, Katie, it absolutely does. So I'm looking at my time here. I've got about 3 minutes. I'm going to try to give you one more in those 3 minutes. Let's see if I can. So strategic thinking smarter, not harder. About priming the brain for process and productivity. So we're going to skip this one because I just want you to think about this. If I asked you to take your right hand and perform as many continuous cycles of rock, paper, scissors with your right hand, at the same time as your left hand was patting your stomach once, pat your stomach twice, pat your stomach 3 times, snap 3 times, and I asked you to do both of them at the same time, what would you say? You'd say I was crazy, right? Just think about that. Now, if we were face-to-face, I'd make you try to do this activity. So, how would you feel if you did that? You'd feel pretty upset, pretty frustrated. Here's what it is. We try to multitask. What it is and what it isn't. True multitasking, true cognitive multitasking does not exist. It's a misnomer. Multitasking means frequent task switching. It causes more errors, we become easily distracted, shallow thinkers, greater brain atrophy, and chronic stress. It creates more challenges with us. Feeling of unproductivity, the culprit, multitasking. Multitasking causes brain fatigue and multiplies the time it takes to finish a task by 5. So here's your brain rule. The solution, brain power of 1. Simplify for sanity. Reduce your multitasking tendencies. Give full attention to the task at hand. Start with 15-minute intervals. Single tasking. Go with single tasking. Focus on 15-minute intervals until you can do a 30-minute interval, until you can do a 60-minute interval. Focus on single tasking. So the brain power of none, step away. The brain power of single tasking, think of 1. And guess what the third one is? The third one is the brain power of 2. During a day, when you're doing something and you have your to-do list, what are the 2 tasks that you could do that could move your company, your job personally and professionally ahead the furthest? Focus on those 2 tasks and don't get distracted by all the other ones. So my time is up. What are the 2 things that you're going to take away from this presentation? In the last 60 seconds, what are the 2 things you're going to take away from this presentation? Would you type those in for me? What are the 2 things that you're going to take away from this presentation? Well, I'm jumping to my last slide here. There's more in the deck. I'm going to give it to you. Practice single tasking. Selena says she's not normal. Dedicate 15 minutes with no multitasking. Okay. Brain power of 1, focus time, don't check my phone as much, avoid distractions, single tasking. I want to thank you very much for playing along today. I know we went through this fast. I appreciate everything you've done. And there's how to get in touch with me. I'm going to be at the Pinnacle Experience. I hope to see you there. And Natasha, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Participants, there's still time to register for the Pinnacle Experience. You can find details on the webpage at smps.org/the Pinnacle Experience. On behalf of SMPS, thank you so much to our presenter, Jeff Hurt, and all of today's participants. Thank you. The program has now ended, and you may disconnect.